Hey guys, welcome to my 2025 NRL Fantasy season review. So yeah, the season's done and dusted now. If you're tuning into this one, you are a real one because this could be anywhere, I don't know, maybe an hour or so. I'm just going to break down every single trade I made, key moments throughout the season, key takeaways, bit of everything. Yeah, just wanted to do it more so for myself more than anything, just to break down the year, see how it went, where I can improve next year. Did finish 251st in the end, so reasonably happy with that result. Rank wise, I'm stoked. I think it's a great season. I was 255th in my last video, and then a few updates. I think Walshy got 5, and then yeah, just moved me 4 ranks higher, so just outside the top 250. It's a great result, all things considered. I think going into every year, if you know you're going to finish 251st, you'll be pretty happy. I did give myself a B plus, which may seem a little harsh for the rank. I just think there were some moves that I could have made throughout the season, especially the back end, where I was in a decent position to probably finish higher than this, and just moves that weren't even unlucky, that were just my fault completely, really set me back a little bit, where I probably could have pushed for a top 50, top 100 finish. Firstly, my stubbornness with Herbie Farnworth and then getting him at the worst point of the season. That's really just on me. There's no one else I can blame there. I can't blame unluckiness, anything like that. So, yeah, that would have boosted me a lot higher. Things like the Galvin trade. Yeah, I don't even know what else off the top of my head, but yeah, there were a few things, especially at the back end of the season, where I probably should have pushed for a higher rank, and I didn't. So I gave myself a B plus, maybe a little bit harsh, but I couldn't really rank myself any higher than that. Obviously, got to have Tallis Duncan repping the front screen here, just because yeah, he was my goat for sure. Enough said about him for now, but yeah, he was awesome throughout the season. The main qualm for me was captaincy. Like, that was my main issue throughout the season. It sort of started in round 3 when I captained Cleary for his 5. Yeah, you can see here, it's just absolutely shocking stuff for me. Terrell May, I captained 11 times, and that was fine. Like, he averaged 74.2 for me, which is slightly above his season average. So yeah, I'll take that. Got his 109, which was good. A low of 54. Like, probably should have just captained him more in the end. Payne Haas wasn't too bad, I guess. Like, he averaged 73.7. I averaged 67. Yeah, he averaged 67.2 for me in the 7 times. That's not terrible. Like, it's a 42 point swing, sorry. So nothing too crazy there. Yeah, I just didn't really captain him for any of his big scores. His highest was 83 for me, which is a little bit disappointing for a guy that averaged 73.7, but like, overall, the average did round out. He didn't really have too many stinkers for me, which was good. But Nathan Cleary was really the tough one. So he obviously got that 115 in the last round, which I wasn't too concerned about. He was never really an option for me going into the round, but I missed all his bad ones and got all his terrible ones. He averaged 68.8 for the season, and the highest score I got from him as a captain over 6 times was 63. So yeah, that really did put a dent in my rank. He averaged 49 for me, averaged 68.8 for the season. So that alone over 6 times is 120 points, and that would have probably pushed me close to the top 100 already. So yeah, really disappointing stuff there. Obviously, it's going to be bad if you only captain him 6 times and one of them was for the 5, but just throughout the course of the season, I just couldn't pick him. I couldn't pick any of the captains. This doesn't even factor in my Kiraz captaincy in the second last round, who got a 43 over Jaden Campbell, who got a 75, who was my other option. So yeah, overall, I think I would have had a negative 200 swing at least with my captaincy, even if I just captained Cleary every week. And obviously he didn't play every week, but even getting a 68.8 average would have put me so much higher in the ranks. So it is a good thing. Like, if there's anything that's screwed up my season, like, if there was anything that was going to screw up my season and I still finished 251st, I'd want it to be captaincy, because it doesn't really reflect anything about my team or about how I played in general. It's just like, it's such a small impact. Like, my team construction was solid, which I don't know. I don't even know what I'm trying to say here, but captaincy is something you can easily work on. Like, next season, I'll just captain the best available every week, or whoever I think is going to be the most captained. Whereas it's not like it was my trades or my team construction or stuff like that, or buy planning, that really screwed my season. It was captaincy, which is such an easy fix. So yeah, actually happy that it was captaincy, even though it is super annoying to look back at where I could have been ranked if I had just done slightly better even, or just the average. Yeah, that's all I'll say on that one. It's a pretty boring topic, but it did have a big impact on my season, so I did want to touch on it quickly. And then my loop and bench swings. So these are the top 4 that I could come across throughout the season. So I didn't... The only ones featuring here are like the 50-50 calls. So if there were 2 guys that I was, like a guy I played versus a guy I benched that I wasn't considering changing at all, like if it was someone 600k versus someone 300k, I'm obviously playing the 600k guy 9 out of 10 times, so I didn't include them. But in terms of 50-50 calls or options I was weighing up, these were my 4 biggest swings. So on the green side, Tallis Duncan over Tamale. Tallis Duncan's 58 and Tamale's 1 was a great call from me. It wasn't really a great call. This was the 4th week I had Tallis Duncan. I think the 3rd actually, because he had a bye in round 12. He was terrible. He scored like a 24, 36, and then maybe a 42 or something like that. But he wasn't doing anything. But I could see something. I was like the only person with him at this point. I think people started to pick him up after round 14. But I could see something in him that wasn't, like he wasn't going to average the low 30s or mid 30s or whatever from now on. Like in the first game, I think they versed the Broncos, who favoured the other side the whole time. Second game, he got sin binned. Third game, can't remember what happened, but I just thought he had the big potential to increase where he'd go, like his future projections, I guess. And yeah, he pumped out a 58, which was good. And it really allowed me to avoid Tamale's game. I think they were versing each other in this one, and Tamale got injured in like the 20th minute for a 1. So that was a good swing. I changed it last minute as well. So that was a fun one. Just wanted to give a bit of lore for that one. Round 17, if you watch this channel, you probably know all about it. I was out drinking. I was at the Wires game that week, and I was safety looping someone, and then I think it was Tallis Duncan actually, and then I changed it to Toby Couchman just because I knew he was 90% owned. He ended up getting a 19, getting injured, and since he was safety looping, I think he was still like my 18th man, but I could make a trade to get someone else in, and there was like 2 games left, and Storm were the only guys with decent players, and I ended up trading Savala for Eli Katoa, who got a 66 and then was awesome throughout the rest of the season. So yeah, that one really started boosting me up the ranks. From there on, it was close to a 50-point swing. But yeah, really set a precedent over the next couple of weeks. I think that was one of my best rounds throughout the year as well, and then just kept flying from there. So that was a fun one. It was a stupid trade. Like the process was terrible, which I knew, but I just wanted to chase points. And it would have been Pappenhausen as well instead of Eli Katoa. That's who I wanted, but I couldn't do it because I had a winger fullback on the bench who would have come in, and then I still would have had Couchman score, which I only realised 5 minutes before the game. So yeah, super lucky to end up on Eli Katoa. I had no interest in him whatsoever. It was just the fact that he played in the last game and Couchman played on the Saturday. So had to do it if I wanted to avoid Couchman's points. Everyone told me not to do it, and they were right. Like it was a terrible trade to make. I got super lucky with it, and Savala got injured like 2 weeks later. So super lucky result, but not the right process, which is why I gave myself a B+ in like the grade for the season, because I'm not too results focused. I more care about the process, and I just think my process wasn't great in some instances. In round 1, nothing too much said about this one. I played Tamale over Jackson Purdue. I didn't even want to start with Jackson Purdue. I thought he was terrible coming into this season. And he obviously had a bit of potential, but I just didn't like him too much as an option. But I did it because he was 230k, but ended up playing Tamale over him. That was a good swing for 34 points. And then round 10, Kartonga over Tamale. So Tamale featured in a lot of these ones. I sort of got him right all season. That was a 31-point swing. So those 4 netted me 169 points, which is good. On the bad side, though, played Latu Fainu over Adam Dewey. This was the second week I had Dewey. He just pumped out a 56 or something the week before, but he was moving back to the centres. Yeah, I think he played the halves the week before, moved back to centres. Didn't trust it too much. He had a season average of about 40, I think. Maybe even less. And now my kid's waking up. I'll have to pause this in a sec. But yeah, he had a season average of about 40 in the centres. Latu Fainu was averaging about that at the time. So I just thought I'd take the risk, go Latu. And it's really annoying because I was out all day and I had it on Adam Dewey as my reserve and then Latu in my non-playing reserve. And I had no idea what time it was because I had forgotten my phone. I managed to get home like 5 minutes before the game, made the change to Latu Fainu, and then Adam Dewey scores a double, ends up playing. That was the start of when he started playing lock as the goal, obviously goal kicking, but in play kicking lock. And yeah, I missed that 85, which is annoying, but Adam Dewey was so good for me throughout the season, which was a very lucky one. And I probably shouldn't have even had Adam Dewey in the first place. I will have to pause this. My kid is waking up. Okay, I'm back. Where was I? I think I was up to Yongi over Purdue. See, this one was a little bit unfortunate. I had traded for Beau Fermor in round 4 just on a whim. I probably shouldn't have done it, but I don't even know why I did it, to be honest. I think I just saw a few people bring him in. I wasn't too focused on fantasy at that stage, and yeah, brought him in, and then Jackson Purdue scores like a 60-something and then a 71. So I just didn't want to play a centre off the bench. Didn't really trust Purdue still at that point. Played a Yongi for an 18, Purdue 71, 53-point swing. Does hurt in the grand scheme of things, but I'm not too stressed about it. It was round 6. Round 9, I did play Kartonga over Dylan Egan, which is a bit annoying. Like, Kartonga was so good at that stage, and Dylan Egan was on the bench. And this was like when he started to be named on the bench and then ended up starting each round. But I think Kartonga played before Egan, and we didn't know that was the thing at that stage. Played Kartonga in the centres, Dylan Egan on the bench, but I could have changed my team around to not play Kartonga at all. And yeah, that one did hurt. I think Dylan Egan scored a try in like the 5th minute or something, and then yeah, it was painful from there. But what can you do? Round 3, again, Tamale. He just features everywhere here. Got this one wrong though. Played him over Purdue. And yeah, Purdue was really good in round 3 to 6 apparently, but yeah, just couldn't pick him. So yeah, overall that netted me minus 18, but overall I think my bench swings were a lot worse than that. But I didn't want to go through every single one throughout the season, just wanted to highlight the big 4, I guess, from each side. But yeah, nothing I can complain about too much. Those 50-50 calls will probably define a lot of your season. I didn't necessarily get them right this season, but it's something you can't really control, can't really plan for. Just want to set up loops better next year, I guess, but nothing concerning. Oh, where are we going? Trade breakdown. So this one's a little bit hard to quantify, I guess. So we'll have 44 trades, but a lot of them fall into a lot of these categories. But I just sort of did the one that they were the most prevalent in. So obviously I could be trading out someone for buy planning and they were underperforming, but if it was primarily for buy planning, I put it under that umbrella, I guess. So out of those 44 trades, 19 were for injuries. So I think I got relatively lucky with injuries this season. I would have expected it to be a little bit higher, but 19 is not too bad. It still allowed me 25 trades of my own free will, which I think is probably a little bit more than most would have had this year. So I think I did get fairly lucky on the injury side of things. But yeah, I can't really quantify that again, like without comparing to other people's teams. But just overall, it felt like I was on the luckier side of things there. 13 trade outs were for buy planning as the main focus. So yeah, I think I had talked about buy planning in full excess. You guys saw my massive buy planning spreadsheet and stuff like that. It still is the number one catalyst for increasing your rank throughout the season in my eyes. I think I did a really good job of planning for it. It was a pretty easy year in terms of the teams that were playing in their favourable buy rounds, had a lot of players we wanted and they were keepers in the end. But yeah, still used a big chunk of my trades just on that little period there. 8 were for underperforming players, which yeah, isn't too bad again, especially like given early season, like in your round 1 team, you're not going to necessarily pick 100% of good players. So to only have 8 underperforming throughout the season as the main reason I traded them, I'll take that all day. And then 4 for up or downgrades. That 4 is a little bit disingenuous because a lot of them would have fallen under the underperforming or buy planning umbrella, but yeah, it wasn't the main reason for them. But yeah, a lot of my buy planning was just to get keepers in. I really avoided the mid-ranges throughout that period. So that's probably closer to 15 or maybe even a little bit higher if you remove the buy planning bracket, I guess. In terms of players I traded in, 24 were for keepers. So I think that's a really strong number. Over 50% of my trades were for keepers. So I think that's really disciplined. Only 6 were for cash generation as the main focus, which actually surprised me. That's a lot lower than I would have thought. It was such an easy year for cash gen throughout the season. from day one. I guess with Terrell May making 300k early, and then there were a lot of easy candidates in our round one teams. I think this year ended up being like squad values of close to $1 million higher than last year. So I harped on about it all season. I didn't really care about cash generation. My team was under, my total squad value was below par for a lot of teams around me, but I was never too concerned about it. I just didn't really have a focus. I am keeper or cash cow really as my main two. Like that should be everyone's motto, but I think I care more about points than anything. Whereas some people do like that cash generation, maybe higher or very close, but I do have points significantly higher than cash generation throughout the season. I managed to avoid guys like King Tongia who weren't too bad in the end, but I think I was disciplined where if I didn't love them as a trade candidate, in terms of the cash cow, I wasn't really pulling the trigger. Like most years, it's 150k is how much you want to make from your cashies. I did have it a little bit higher this year, maybe closer to that 200k mark, just because it was so easy to find money. So yeah, only 6 of them were for cash generation, which I think is a very low number. But again, like there were more than that. Some went into buy planning, underpriced keepers, blah blah blah. Like they all fall into the umbrella. Only 5 trade-ins were primarily for buy planning, which again is disingenuous because I obviously traded out 13 players in terms of setting up for my buy planning period. But 8, I guess, it would have been 8 of those would have been keepers. So 8 out of 13 trades for buy planning being keepers, I think is a really strong number. I did really manage to avoid those mid-ranges throughout that period, whereas a lot of other teams did just pick up numbers. And I think I planned for like round 15 and 18 very early. I think I picked up Tallis Duncan, Scott Drinkwater around that round 9, round 10 mark. So while a lot of other teams were scrambling for later by round numbers, I was pretty well set up and I already had a strong round 12 team. So yeah, I managed to avoid those mid-ranges, and I think my team construction coming out of the buy planning period, like round 18 onwards, was set up a lot better than a lot of other teams as a result. So yeah, I was super disciplined with my trades this year. Only 5 for mid-ranges throughout the whole season is a really, really strong number. Mid-ranges, they obviously have such a bad stigma throughout the NRL Fantasy community, I guess. Like, you want to avoid them like the plague. I don't necessarily think that's true, but I think there were a lot of underpriced guns throughout the season, like Reece Walsh, Jerome Hughes, Kalen Ponga, who didn't eventuate as a good pickup, Hosking, Aitken. There were so many throughout the years that I think it was a pretty easy year to avoid those middies. And a lot of those pickups would have been during the buy period. I know off the top of my head, I picked up Damien Cook. But again, at that time, he was a chance of being an underpriced gun. He had just come into an 80-minute role or close to 80 minutes, and he had the catalyst and pedigree to be a keeper if those minutes eventuated throughout the season, which they ended up doing after I traded him out. But yeah, I just think it was a pretty easy season to avoid middies, and I'm not necessarily averse to them, but it's season by season, week by week, I guess, and there weren't too many that I liked as an option. And then 4 underpriced guns throughout the season that I did pick up. So did pick up Reece Walsh in the round he got injured in, round 8, 9, 10, whatever it was, which didn't work out. Got very lucky, not lucky, I guess. Jerome Hughes picked him up when he was coming into form, which was good. And then Hosking and Aitken, who I did think were underpriced guns, didn't work out until I traded them out. I guess Hosking was a beast after that. But yeah, I think overall my trade breakdown was very disciplined throughout the season. My team construction was set up really well, and it did pay off in the end more than anything. And then I just wanted to do a little breakdown of each segment throughout the season. So rounds 1 to 10. After round 1, I was ranked 8,552nd. Well, I don't know why that says TH instead of ND, whatever. Yeah, so it was an okay round. I always start terribly. That's the one thing about me. I obviously started this like YouTube stuff about round 8 or whatever it was. So you don't really get to see my early stages, but I am a terrible starter. I don't necessarily think my starting squad's ever too bad, but I am very reluctant to trade early and I like saving them for the end of the season. So yeah, if you're tuning in next year, just do not expect a crash hot start. I am terrible at the start of the season, but then I usually come home flying, which is good, as we saw this season. By round 10, I was up to 5,136, so it was an improvement, still not where I want to be. I was floating around that 8,000 mark for a lot of that period, and then it started to come good. I only used 14 trades throughout that part though, so did manage to save a few. Again, I didn't trade in round 1, which I never do. And then, managed to save a few throughout the early rounds, and then as it starts to get to round 6, 7, 8, I do start to use 2 every week, which is a little bit of a weakness of mine. I think I want to change that next year, but we'll see. Like, it's season by season again. Round 5 was shocking, 60,000 plus. And then round 8, I finished 3,259. So that was a better round, but it was not a great start at all. Rounds 11 to 18 is really where things started to turn around for me. It was the buy planning period. That's usually where I make up the most ground. And obviously 5,000th into 600th is a really good result. 18 trades used throughout that period. So only 14 used in the first 10 rounds, and then the next 8 rounds I used 18 trades. So you can really see I start to step it up there. We do have 4 trades at our disposal most of those weeks, which I don't necessarily use every week, but I do really ramp up the trading throughout that period. And I would expect most teams would use the bulk of their trades throughout the buy planning phase, but I do really, really go hard during there. And I probably wanted to use more. In round 12, all my loopers did well, which is when I wanted to target a 4 trade week, but I ended up using 0 that round. So that 18 could have easily been higher, and then who knows where I would have been set up towards the back end of the season. But it wasn't a bad period. Like, I didn't really have a bad week. 16,000th is, as your worst result over 8 rounds, is pretty damn good, I reckon. Then 1,051st in round 17. And I had back-to-back weeks. I think it was either 16 or 18, where I finished around the same mark, like 1100th or something. So, really strong period. And to be 600th in round 18, I did think I was a shot at top 100 for sure, but it did fall off a little bit after that. Then rounds 19 to 27. So, round 18, 599th. Obviously, and then end result 251st. So, given the ground I was making up earlier, that's 3,000 ranks, 4,500 ranks. Only obviously you can't make up that if you're already 600th, but it did really fall off the ground I made, and I did think I was in a really strong position. So to only finish 251st is a little bit disappointing, just based on where I was coming out of the bye period, but it is what it is. It's still a good result for the season. Round 22 was my best, finishing 412th. I think I finished the season in 1,400th in round 27 as well. So had a few decent rounds there. Round 25 was shocking, 26,000th. And I think round 26 was pretty similar as well. So wasn't a great period for me, but I did have a strong finish. Like, round 27 really saved my graces. I was 436th, I think, coming into round 27. So, the last round made my rank a little bit more respectable than it probably should have been, given how I had performed during that round 19 to 26 period. And then player of the season, just wanted to give a little shout out to Tallis Duncan again. I think he holds a special place in my heart just because everyone picked him. I think it was 50% owned when everyone started to pick him up in round 14, 15. But I was so high on him in round 10. I think in my buy, hold, sell video, he was the only buy I had. Everyone else was a medium buy, but he was the strongest buy. And he started terribly. He scored a 24, 36, 42, I think it was. And that's when I had him and no one else had him. But I could see something in him, like I mentioned before. And it was just good, to get a bit of vindication. I'd only just started my YouTube channel. I think it was week 3 or 4 of me actually doing it. So I did put a lot of weight into Tallis Duncan, and I didn't want to let people down. So the fact he came out flying after that was really good to see. I know a few of you guys ended up getting on him, getting on Brayley when I did recommend him pretty highly. Brayley was okay, but Tallis Duncan was phenomenal. That 96 in whatever round he scored, that was just such a fun watch. That was the day Tony Couchman got injured as well. So yeah, that was a strong round for me. Just scoring 2 tries in like 2 minutes, I think it was. I think it was back-to-back sets. Such a fun one, and he was already on 50 or something before then. So yeah, ended up averaging 54.1 for me, including that 24, 36, 42 in the first 3 weeks, and I only owned him for 8 or 9 games. So yeah, really strong. 405k I paid for him. Had to be my player of the season for sure. I was going to do an LVP as well, but just felt too haterish, but that would have been Herbie Farnworth for sure. But that's my fault, not his. Yeah, it was such a fun one to own him throughout the season. And yeah, just wanted to give a shout out to him. That's all for the graphics now. I do have a massive document here going through all my trade breakdowns and stuff like that. 2,500 words. So if you want to tune in for that, feel free. We'll get into it now. But just wanted to get my takeaways before I go into a trade breakdown. So again, I've split this into a few different segments throughout the season just because I do believe that all different parts of the season are so different in terms of what you should be doing. So yeah, for the starting team, early rounds, the things that I learnt, early buys aren't a bad thing to give you a loop option. I know I started with Jaden Campbell in my starting team, who had a buy in round 1. Munster had a buy in round 2. And I think giving yourself an early loop option is actually a really good thing. Like, people are scared or like scared away of options when they do have a buy in the first couple of weeks, but that's when your team's not the strongest, but your depth is the strongest. Like, if you don't have 21 players that are playing, like in your starting team, you're doing something wrong because, yeah, we obviously know the team list. There's not injuries, concussions, suspensions in those early rounds. So you're going to have 17 on the park no matter what. So yeah, like Jaden Campbell, for instance, who I thought would average 60, you're losing 60 points, but you're probably gaining 10, 15, 20 points from your loop option anyway. So it's effectively like you're having a keeper. And with picks being so unreliable, like let's say you have Tamale versus Purdue, like they're not all going to be standout picks. And if Purdue scores a 15, it allows you to not take that score necessarily. And he's going to be so highly owned if 100% of teams have him or whatever. So yeah, I actually really liked having those options in the early rounds. I don't know how my loop options did. I'll check it. Oh, I guess I could check it, but yeah, again, you don't want to be too results focused. Just having the option to have a loop early on when most people won't, I think is a really good option. And that doesn't mean you pick up someone just because they have a buy, but I think if there's a clear standout option that Jaden Campbell was, I wouldn't necessarily avoid him just because of that early buy, which a lot of people did. And yeah, it allowed me to have Jaden Campbell early where a lot of people didn't. And he was clearly going to be better than where he was projected for the season. So yeah, just a little takeaway from me, because it was a little bit risky coming into the season, but it did work out well. 1 or 2 high risk, high reward players over medium risk / medium reward mid ranges for starting teams. So sorry, I'm choking up here, doing a lot of talking. Yeah, so I started the season with guys like Alex Safar, Tom Gilbert, who I would classify as medium risk / medium reward. We didn't even know what their roles were. Tommy Gilbert was coming back off an ACL and was likely, I think he was starting lock and then moved to edge quickly after. But the upside in the lock role was probably 60, 65 minutes, and that was never going to be the case coming out of an ACL injury, even though he was the captain. I think he did play 60 in the first round, but the reward wasn't there. Like, best case, he was probably going to average 46, 47, and I think he was priced at around 40. So there was such big risk coming off an injury, not knowing what his role was, and I still picked him up when there was someone like a Nafahu White, who was a high risk, high reward because the Roosters were missing a couple of guys. I think round 1, he was going to have like his most minutes projection because there were a few guys out that were coming back in round 2, but there were similar prices, I think. So I think next season I want to go for someone like Nafahu White, who, yeah, is more risky but has that higher reward over someone who has minimal upside anyway that is still risky. Like, there was severe downside for Tom Gilbert, but the reward wasn't there. Whereas Nafahu White, he could have easily averaged 30, 35 if the minutes weren't there, like if he was back to the bench in the second round. But you have 44 trades, you can get out of that situation pretty easily. And the reward payoff is so much higher if it does pay off, and a lot of people won't have him. So Nafahu White did didn't have a great score in round one. I think he got like a 40, so I would have been disappointed with that, given that was his highest projection score. But then he averaged like 55 from round 2 to 10 or whatever it was. So yeah, I just want to set myself up where I'm not always going for the medium risk reward guys moving forward. And you don't want to fill yourself with heaps of those guys, but there's always options in round 1, 2 that present themselves that weren't on your target board or you didn't end up going with that you want to trade to anyway. So even if that player doesn't work out, it's an easy trade candidate that you can trade out to get some to bring in one of those guys, which was very prevalent in my team. So Jamie Humphries scored a 73 or something in the first round, maybe even a 77. And I had no one I wanted to trade to him. So I didn't get him into round 3 and I had to trade Fogarty for him because all my other guys, I didn't want to trade Gilbert safe after that point because I thought the upside was still there, which it wasn't in the end. And I had to trade him anyway, but I missed out on Humphries, like 85K, another 70 because I had no one to trade him. But if I had an Afahu White, even if he hadn't have worked out, I could have traded him. So yeah, just something I want to be more open to that I've never done in the past. And then yeah, same thing applies, being more open to trading after round 1. I've never done it. I could probably tell you I might have done it 1 or twice in my whole fantasy career, which is a long, long time. So funny to call it a career. But yeah, I just want to be more open to it. I missed out on someone like Humphries this year. I've missed out on guys in the past because I just want to save my trades early when I have to use them, play catch up anyway. So yeah, I want to get off to a better start next year and see where that goes. And then the same thing sort of applies. Go early on near sure things with solid short-term data. So that's Humphries, for example. There was Lewis Dodd in the background at the time, which is funny because he never ended up playing at all. But it was clearly a sure thing. He had like a -20, -30 break even, and I just didn't bite the bullet until round 3. Guys like Payne Haas, who was averaging 5 or 6 offloads in the first couple of rounds, which was enough to give him like +10 on his price. But again, I still couldn't pull the trigger until after he scored 100 because I wanted to see more data. So there were 2 clear sure things. Worst case, Payne Haas would have averaged where he was priced at, and I have a keeper. So I had the means to get him in. I just didn't pull the trigger because I wanted to see a bit more data. So next season, I want to trust my gut a little bit more, trust what I'm seeing in the moment as opposed to historical data or outside noise or whatever it is. And yeah, just pull the trigger a bit earlier. Rounds 4 to 9, so it's a bit of a shorter period, but I think it's when I usually play catch up, like when I don't make as many early trades, and then round 4 to 9 is when I sort of ended up having to use 2 anyway. So I think those trades were mainly used for cashing out players, like cash cows that have peaked or mid-ranges that you're not too keen on. So I think it's probably the least important trade period. And yeah, it's up to you to identify when your cash cows are peaked, but like you're not really making severe upgrades to your team. I think I did bring in a couple of guys like Hines, Fermor and stuff, but they didn't end up eventuating. So yeah, they're keepers, but you can sort of bring them in at any point. So in terms of like getting rid of the bad players from your early teams, that's going to be in the first couple of rounds. Planning for the bye period sort of starts around round 9, 10, and then post-bye rounds when you get into your final team. So it's really a little bit of a block in rounds 4 to 9 that I don't think is necessarily as important as how many trades I use for that period. It doesn't really make my team stronger. It sort of just gets rid of the weaknesses. So yeah, I want to try and minimize the trades I use throughout that period next season, because I did end up using like 2 every week, I think. So just something to note for me for next season. And then getting off your near peak cash cows early, if there's a strong option available, really worked out well for me this season. I did get rid of a lot of guys early, like Savala, Sam Walker, Purdue, Kartonga, Iongi. I don't know if Iongi was early, but yeah, a lot of those guys I got off maybe 1 to 2 to even 3 weeks earlier than most people were planning on. And yeah, I might have missed out on 50K or so for the most part, but with cash generation being so easy, it allowed me to make those upgrades earlier. And yeah, I really gained a few more points than most people did. And can be a negative effect there. Like I know Sam Walker ended up making about 100K or so. He pumped out a 75 and then was unlucky to get a -1 the next week when he got a concussion early. So yeah, it can not work out in your favor, but for the most part, it did this season, and I think it will for the most part in most seasons, unless cash generation is so hard to come by. But it wasn't this year. I can't anticipate it will be next year with a lot of options that we know will be available, like Keanu Kinney, Kalen Ponga, Dylan Brown, players like that off the top of my head. So yeah, if it's such an easy year for cash gen, just target points over that more than anything. Then for the buy period, it remains the number one time to make ranks in my eyes anyway. That was when I saw the biggest jump because I planned well. A lot of the teams aren't going to plan as well as you. Like if you're watching YouTube videos, if you have a buy planner, you're going to be in a stronger position than 90+% of the competition. And a lot of the top 1,000, 5,000 at that time won't be planning for buy rounds. Like a lot of casual players will be there. So yeah, you really will stick out from the crowd if you are planning well. Points over cash generation. So yeah, I've harped on about it throughout this video already, but it's a period where a lot of people end up picking up mid-ranges. There were some cash cows that were available, like King Tongia, who weren't necessarily strong options. Who he did work out in the end. I think he finished at like 500k, and he was minimum price when he came in. So he did work out, but he averaged like 33 for the season. So is that someone you really want to be stuck with? If you know they're not necessarily a great option, like a mid-ranger, I can't think of any that were available on the top of my head, but I managed to avoid those guys. And from round 19 onwards, my team construction, I only had to use a couple of trades to get to my final team, whereas a lot of teams were either stuck with those guys or ran out of trades a little bit earlier because they were stuck with those mid-rangers or lower upside cash cows who just weren't performing too well, and they had to play in some weeks where you only have 17, 18 players available. So yeah, I was in a position where I didn't have to, but a lot of people did. So that's just my thoughts there. And yeah, focus on team construction and avoid mid-ranges is what I just talked about. In terms of the post-buy period / final team, so round 19 onwards, this was not the season for multiple cash downs. And I did have a few videos talking about cash downs and saying it's probably a good idea to get a couple. I ended up with Nathan Lawson, who I traded to Jed Stewart, who were both cash downs. And then I got Ethan King as well. So I ended up with 2. You probably didn't need any. By the end of the season, I had 0. And yeah, Ethan King I traded out in round 26, and I didn't even have to. Like I could have made a bigger upgrade, but it was just what I ended up doing. But it wasn't a season where we ended up needing multiple cash downs, and I probably should have identified that a bit earlier, given our team values were so much stronger than last year. So in other seasons, it will be necessarily to have at least one, and one probably wasn't bad. I think a lot of teams ended up with Talon Silva, Joash Papali, and stuff like that. But yeah, I did make a mistake having 2, and especially guys that were not red dots. Like Ethan King ended up being 18th man every week, so I couldn't loop him, which is super unfortunate. But Jed Stewart was playing and running on my bench, scoring 20s every week. So yeah, that was where my team construction did fail, but everything else was pretty good in terms of that aspect. 18th and 19th men should be considered keepers. So this was prevalent for my team when I did pick up Ethan King. In my eyes, I was getting in someone who was a keeper because he was a cash down in my team, so he was going to stay in my team. But I could have picked up Tommy Turbo for 350 or 400k at that point, and I had like 900k in my team, in my bank, sorry. But I didn't think Tommy Turbo was a final team keeper because he wouldn't have fit my top 17. But I could have used him as an 18th, 19th man, and I should have realised that they should be considered keepers at that point, and I just didn't. So that's my bad. Team construction remains key, so yeah, I'm not going to talk about that. I already have a bit. Especially in the last rounds, attacking players are far more valuable than forwards and like tackle bots and stuff like that. Games open up so much. Like in terms of betting lines, the projected points totals are at least 4 points higher in most of the games. Like early season, you're getting around the 37.5 to 41.5, but by the end of the season, almost every game is 45.5 or above. And we really saw with the fullbacks at the end of the season, like especially Reece Walsh, who pumped out 90 pluses every week. Dylan Edwards, who had a period there where he was averaging 60 plus. Tommy Turbo got a few decent scores. I think he got like a 90 and then a couple of 70s, stuff like that. Fullbacks and outside backs just really performed so strong compared to middle forwards, which is just the nature of the game. Like teams don't have much to play for. the games that are bigger blowouts, bigger mismatches like first versus 17th. Early in the season, maybe it's only a 10-point difference, but you see games that are 30, 40-point swings, especially the Dolphins. Like they were blowing out teams by 50, then losing by 50 plus the next week. I think I want to target more attacking players. I ended up picking like Carrigan, Kurt Donahue, stuff like that, who really fell off towards the end of the season, where I could have had Dylan Edwards, Reece Walsh, who knows, whatever outside backs. I didn't have a chance. I didn't think about it during those final 5 rounds. So that's something I definitely want to target for next year. That's probably the main takeaway for me over anything at this stage. And keepers get very, very cheap. We saw Jaden Campbell get to like 550k. There was like every keeper was so cheap. I think the highest available was like 700k at one point, apart from Terrell May, Cleary, and Haas. We're going to get so many underpriced keepers towards the back end of the season, and you're not going to fit them all in, but you don't need to have that much money in the bank at that stage. And again, I had 900k just sitting there for a while that it took me 4 weeks to use because I had 2 cash downs and not many players that were expensive to pick up. So yeah, that was another one where I could have easily had a better rank. And then total team value doesn't really matter. I was going to take this one out, but my team value was lagging behind the whole season, yet my rank just kept climbing. So even when I was in the top 500, it was 1, 2, 300k below guys ranked next to me. And it didn't end up mattering because keepers got so cheap in the end, and points matter more than cash in the end. Let me get here. Let me just go to the rankings just to sort of quantify this. So I thought it was a bigger gap than this, but yeah, first had 14.5 million and I had a 14.4 squad value. So I finished 250th versus first, and I was only 80k behind. Second, I beat by about 300k team value, but he obviously beat me by 560 points. So it really does not matter at all what your team value is for most parts of the season. As long as your team construction is good, you've got trades in the bank, you're getting points, that matters more than cash generation for me in every degree. Look at this. 9th had 15 million cash team value, but still couldn't finish in the top 3 or whatever. And 9th is an awesome result, but I'm just talking in terms of like team value here versus second who had 800k less. Like it's crazy. And that's probably a little bit more swingy in the back end of the season where prices are really diluted and don't really matter. But yeah, it does show you how insignificant it is for the most part, I guess. Now we get onto the very long part of the video. So this is a total breakdown of every single trade I made throughout the season, how it ended up going. I'm not sure how in depth I'll go here. Like obviously I've got a lot of reading that you can do, but you might have to pause for a lot of it if you want to check out all my thoughts, I guess. But in terms of my round 1 team, I did have more wins than losses in terms of players I picked up. Jaden Campbell, Greg Marzu, Cameron Munster, Horsburgh, Preston, Garrick, Tamale. They all did really well. A lot of them weren't super high owned. I know Campbell, Marzu, Munster, Preston, and Tamale, I think, were all under 20%. So not that they were pods, but they were less popular picks, and they did do really well for me. I'm not including like the obvious ones like Terrell May and stuff like that that were no-brainers that everyone had. But in terms of my losses, Tommy Gilbert, Alex Seyfarth, Jamal Fogarty, Jack Cole, and Tom Duffy really didn't work out for me. In terms of Jamal Fogarty, he was fine. It's just I was locked into him after game 1. I think he played in the second game actually for the round, but there was the week before because they played in Vegas, and I picked him up and I was stuck with him for that week. And I like to make a lot of changes to my round 1 team throughout like the week, I guess, or the coming days, and after we see results and stuff. And when we saw Jamie Humphries score well, I would have loved to downgrade Jamal Fogarty to someone else, but I just couldn't because I was locked into him because he played before Humphries. So that one really didn't work out. I ended up having to trade him even though he was a keeper. And the rest are pretty much no-brainers. Like Jack Cole and Tom Duffy were terrible. Duffy got dropped after like 3 weeks. Jack Cole made 100k. Then Tommy Gilbert and Alex Seyfarth, the guys I talked about that didn't really have much upside. I think I made 60k on Seyfarth and lost a bit on Gilbert, but again, that upside wasn't there. There was a little bit of upside, like probably 10 points if it all worked out. But there were guys like Mafahu White available that had like the high risk, high reward that I probably should have done. And also I had so many halves in my team. Like, look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 halves in my starting team. And I was locked into Jamal Fogarty. And it was just terrible. Like, if I didn't get Fogarty, like if I hadn't got him straight away, I would have pivoted to Payne Haas because I didn't like any of the mids available. I did want Nafahu White, but he was too risky for my eyes. Like Terrell May, Watson, and Horsburgh were definitely in my team. Hubner, I was pretty confident in, but that was only one, back. That's what am I talking about? One mid as my depth, and I really wanted a second one, and I would have bought in Payne Haas if I wasn't locked into Fogarty. That was unfortunate, but that was totally my fault. I think he was priced at like 53, and he averaged 60 in like 9 games without Ethan Strange last year. With Ethan Strange as his halves partner last year, so I was keen on him, but Payne Haas was the no-brainer one that I did miss. And Luke Metcalf, he ended up being awesome as well. It's a little bit annoying. Like, I already had 8 halves. I wasn't as sold on Metcalf as the other ones. I knew Jack Cole was a risk with Blaze Tawangi there, but I think they had said Jack Cole was the number one, so I wanted him at a cheaper price point. Metcalf, I just didn't think he'd get the kicking splits. I thought he'd get about 30% of the kicking. Ended up getting close to 90%. And a lot of people traded him after round 1 where he got 18 or something, but he did have 90% kicking, so I was telling all my friends to keep him. So I would have ended up keeping him for who knows how long, and he ended up averaging 50 or 55 or something. So, yeah, he would have stayed in my team, and I would have got 300k from him, but ended up with Jack Cole and Tom Duffy instead. So, not great. My starting team wasn't awesome. I was ranked 8,500th, but it was an okay team construction in general. So I was allowed to save trades over the first few weeks and set a platform for buy planning. Talked about Fogarty. I did want to adjust when Jamie Humphries scored that 70-something or whatever it was in the first round. I needed to get a plan to trade him in for the next week because I had like 10k in the bank or something, and he was awkwardly priced at like 350k, maybe closer to 400k. So I contemplated Munster Brimson, but I already had Jaden Campbell, so I didn't want 2 guys with a buy one round, and it felt too reactionary, especially with like Lewis Dodd in the war. I think he was suspended or something for round 1 or injured, and I thought he was the number 1 choice at that point. And then, wanted Nafahu White as well, but he felt like a 1-week punt, and then would have got Haas if it wasn't for Fogarty. So, it wasn't a terrible team. Obviously, the rank doesn't really reflect how you're going to be. You're never really going to be in the top 1,000 in terms of your rank after round 1, unless, because there's always some random players that go off that aren't great picks, but they just have a really good round 1. And if you did have a good round 1 rank, chances are you're going to drop off pretty quickly. But I'd like to be closer to the top 5,000 after a couple of rounds, which I never am. So, I don't know what to do next season. I think just get a few more of those high upside guys, trade out of my round 1 team a bit earlier. But we'll see how it goes next year anyway. Like I said, round 2, no trades. I never make a trade after the first round. I did really want to do Fogarty for Humphries, but I couldn't pull the trigger with Lewis Dodd there, and don't trade keepers philosophy. So I think that is a good philosophy, but it does have some asterisks, and this should have been one of them. Get Humphries in no matter what. And then, Humphries got a 72 and made 85k, and I had to make that trade in round 3 anyway. So, had to do it. Humphries did get a 74 that round, thankfully. He was on 18 at halftime or something, and I was like, of course, the week I finally bring him in. He's terrible. He ended up moving to lock with a few injuries. The Rabbitohs had so many injuries early in the season. He pumped out 45 tackles or something like that. Still goal kicked, still kicked in play for his 600 meters or whatever. He was awesome. It was a good trade, even though he did get injured, and he looked so much better early in the season as opposed to end of the season, even without Latrell. So, should have done it a week earlier, which I will definitely be doing next year if a similar circumstance comes up. But learning curve there. I did contemplate a way to get in Haas that week, after 81 and 85, and he was offloading 5-6 times a game, which looked like it was going to stick. He ended up pumping out a 106, and I got him in a week later. Story of my early season. I did also want Matty Nicholson that round. He was a pretty no-brainer. He scored like an 85 in the first game. I think Hosking got injured, and then he was in. Yeah, I can't remember, but Matty Nicholson was a late in. That was his first game. Played 80 on the edge, scored 2 tries, looked really good, made a lot of tackles. Wanted him in. He was like 550k or something. I just wasn't sure if he'd play 80 because Hosking never got that 80-minute role on the right edge. But he was sort of a no-brainer pick. Hello, Willow. And I just didn't bring him in because I thought he'd probably only make 100, 150k, and he felt too mid-rangerous for me. So should have done that. Should have done Haas. Didn't. It is what it is. Round 4, made the 2 trades. So Watson to Haas. Watson had a HIA. He was only out for a week, but there were a few Roosters coming back, and I didn't think he'd play 80 in that split role, which I guess we saw at the end of the season, but worked out well. He wasn't great after that, and I needed a way to bring in Haas anyway, so that was a bit of a no-brainer. Haas was okay after that, never really reached the heights of his 106 and stuff like that in the first couple of weeks, but was good, and kept him for the season. Then Duffy, who was dropped to Kitione Kartonga, so really enjoyed Kartonga. He didn't have much data. He wasn't even playing 80. He was playing like 60 minutes at that stage, but he was cheap enough. He filled the positions I needed, like at second row and centre, and I took a flyer on him, and it worked out really well. Someone like that I probably won't want to pick up next season. Like, he made 200 plus K or whatever and was awesome, but it was a very big risk, and the upside probably wasn't there. Like, he turned out a lot better than he probably should have. So next season, I'll probably want to avoid someone like that, but it worked out this season. I'll be completely honest, I'm not 100% sure where I was up to. This is now 6 hours later in real life time. Parenthood, I guess, for you. But I think I just finished round 4, so I'll jump into round 5 and hope for the best. So yeah, 2 trades in round 5 again. Tom Gilbert to Bo Fermor. This was like a bit of a weird one. I never had any plans to get in Fermor this early. I knew he was like one of the number 1 or 2 best centers at the time, but I just had no plans to get him in this early. He was still quite expensive, maybe like 750k or something like that. He was okay. Like, he averaged 51.4 in my team, but he did lose 110k, which is fine, like, across the season. The main issue was Purdue scored a 61 that round and a 71 the next round, who was in my non-playing reserves, and Fermor started off with a 20 and a 30, so didn't work out too well off the bat. Fermor did get 100 a couple of rounds later, but yeah, the first couple of weeks he moved to centre straight off the bat, which was annoying. It's probably a good time to say, I was meant to say it when I was talking about my opening team, I have not played fantasy seriously in years. I do play it. Like, I make a team every year, but I haven't really paid too much attention the last couple of years. I guess just fatigue playing it for so long, but I do love it. Just had quite a full-on couple of years. I was working 7 days a week for about 2 years there. So just didn't have as much time to watch footy. So I literally made my team, I think maybe like 6 or 7 days before. So that's why it was a little bit of a scrambled team. Like, I had 8 halves and stuff like that. Probably didn't do as much research as I would have liked. So pretty happy to finish 251st off the back of that. I will obviously, moving forward, be watching a little bit more preseason stuff like that, in terms of having a YouTube channel and stuff. But hopefully that means I'll have a better start next year. But this one, I just saw Fermor, a few people picking him up in fantasy groups, and I thought there must have been a reason, so I picked him up. So that one didn't work out well, but no one to blame but myself there. The other trade was Sandon Smith for Dylan Egan, so I did take a bit of a risk in both regards here. Like, Sandon Smith was clearly not peaked at the time, and Dylan Egan had only played 1 game off the bench and got like 50, but there were a few injuries in the game. I just really liked what I saw from Dylan Egan, and Sandon Smith. I wasn't loving his scores, despite the fact he probably had 50 or so K to make, and he ended up making 100k plus, I think, because he got a 75, but then backed it up with a -2 on the injury game. So got lucky on that front. If he didn't get injured, he probably would have made closer to 150, maybe 200k, depending on how he went. Dylan Egan worked out perfectly. He ended up starting at edge a few weeks and then moving to the middle and playing close to 80 in that dual role. So everyone got on him, but I was one of the first. He wasn't too heavily owned after that first week, given he came off the bench. But that one worked out well, but probably not the correct process. But I do like I mentioned, getting off cash cows a little bit earlier if I can see a clear upgrade or downgrade in my team. And yeah, it just freed up about 200k, so that one worked out well. Moving on to round 6, and you can sort of see a trend here. Like I use 2 trades every round from round 4 to round 7 at least, probably further. Yeah, no trades in round 8. But so my thinking of not trading in round 1, like after round 1, doesn't really come to fruition because I end up just chasing them anyway. So I'm not really saving trades. Most of my starting team didn't last. I don't think anyone was still in my team. So yeah, it does make me want to make a few more early trades next year for sure. But round 6, Humphreys got injured, so traded him out for Yo. Pretty no-brainer here. Like Humphreys' injury was unlucky. He probably would have stayed in everyone's team apart from that. Yo, I did really want. It was sort of just the last round I could justify bringing him in before Origin with the Panthers' schedule. And obviously him playing Origin, you probably don't want him in normal circumstances around that Origin period. So I did want him in general, and I thought that was the last round. So it worked out okay. He made average 63.4 in 5 weeks, and then I traded him out after we knew they were resting a few more weeks there. Was it worth it? Not sure. Probably won't go that path again. Like if there's some more keepers on the board next year that aren't Origin guys, I'd probably look to bring them in instead. So not a bad result, but probably not the best process there either. And then Jack Cole for Savala. So Jack Cole was dropped at this point, I think, or maybe injured, not sure. I think he got a concussion and then didn't come back, like was 18th man or whatever every week for Blaze Talangi. Savala had a 75 break even at the time for a 230k guy. So I was taking a big risk here, but because he hadn't played a game at this point. Oh, no, he played a couple of games off the bench. I think he just came off like a -4 or something, but he was going to be the starting halfback. I did like what I saw in New South Wales Cup, just highlights. I don't watch New South Wales or Queensland Cup. I just watch their little highlights on YouTube. But he's like 6'4", bigger body. Usually that translates to tackles no matter what. Like even if they're not a great defender, if they had that frame, like we saw with Humphreys, who is a good defender, but like usually if they're that mold, I can bank on them for a few tackles. Did a lot of kicking as well. So I liked what I saw, picked him up, took another risk here, trading in someone early, same as Dylan Egan, but it worked out really well. Everyone ended up picking him up as soon as he looked like making money, and after a few games. He scored like 35 40s in the first couple of weeks, so nothing exciting, but worked out well. It was a long-term hold in the end, which was good. Round 7, Alex Seyfarth for Nico Hines. So Seyfarth had to go. Like he wasn't really making too much. His role was good. Like he was still playing 80 on the edge, I think, but he just wasn't doing too much with it. He's not a natural edge. I was actually really excited by him in preseason, knowing he would get an 80-minute edge role, but he just wasn't doing too much. He made me 64k, so I'm grateful for that, but that's about all he offered for me. His scores were pretty terrible. I did bank on Hines' upside here. I knew he wouldn't play Origin because he's so far off their radar. It's not funny. I was banking on his upside, which I guess we saw towards the back end of the season. He ended up averaging 55 for the season, which is pretty crazy. But he was terrible for me. He lost me 144k and then turned crazy after I traded him out, which I didn't even want to trade him out. So that's a bit annoying, but it's fine. Like I think I'm happy to take the flyer on a high upside, underpriced keeper. We saw it with Jerome Hughes that did work out. It's not always going to work out. That's why they're underpriced to begin with. But yeah, I like the flyer there. And then Jaden Campbell for Walsh. So this is a weird one. I was going to keep Jaden Campbell. We heard the day before, I think, that he got injured in training, and we didn't, like, no one was really reporting what it was. There was like one rumor out there that it was a syndesmosis, and he was just so expensive. And I thought, I'm going to take the risk. He doesn't have the most favourable buys. I think he missed round 12 and 15. So I was like, even if it is short term, I'm probably not going to miss out on too much. You don't really want your goal kicking half to carry an ankle injury anyway. Turns out he was out for like 3 to 4 weeks. He might have even come back early, but took a gamble that it would be medium to long term, which it was in the end. But I traded him to Walsh, and that was the game he got injured after like 2 minutes. Played on for like a 28 or something. But yeah, he was out for like 8 weeks after that. So terrible timing on that one. Another one trying to get an underpriced keeper, which didn't work out. Obviously, we saw what Walsh can do towards the back end of the season, but he wouldn't have been this good if Adam Reynolds wasn't injured, because he picked up a lot more goal kicking, a lot more. He picked up the goal kicking, picked up a bit more in-play kicking, and just picked up the slack when they needed him in a bit more of those plays. So yeah, probably wouldn't have worked out anyway. Probably would have averaged between 45 and 50, but he was so cheap at the time, like under 500k, I think. Round 8, there were no trades. And yeah, that Walsh one is probably the only one I got super unlucky with injuries all year, so no complaints at all. Round 9, back to 2 trades. Seems like the theme. Jackson Purdue for Aaron Clark. So this was the second week I started making YouTube videos, I think. And the week before, I was pretty adamant Clark was not a keeper by any stretch of the imagination. He just played one game playing 70 minutes at lock, but he'd never ever played over 60 minutes before. Looked like a bit of, like, I don't know, like it wasn't sustainable long term, and I didn't want to bring him in. There was only one circumstance which I recommended bringing him in. It was if you didn't have if you did have Yo, I think, I can't remember. If you needed a hooker for whatever round he played, like round 15 or 18 in the bye rounds, and if you didn't have any backup hookers apart from Mamazelis, and that fit my team, so I picked him up. Super lucky that my team circumstance was like that, because I wouldn't have picked him up otherwise, and might not have had him for a long, long time, and then I probably would have been too stubborn to pick him up anyway. So there was every chance I ran this season without Aaron Clark, and probably finished outside the top 1,000, but it worked out well for me. Just based on the fact my team construction was the way it was without any other hooker. And then lucky Hubner for Riley Smith. So Hubner was early as well, another trade out that was probably easily going to make 50 to 100K, but he was out with a HIA that week. I didn't necessarily need the numbers, but all his minutes were based on Bunny's mid-game injuries. Like, they had 2 to 3 every game. It was crazy, and we saw how many injuries they had throughout the season, but I didn't think his minutes were sustainable. He ended up coming back off the bench anyway and never really got above 40 for at least a month or two anyway. So average low 30s. It was a good trade out in the end, but again, probably a little bit lucky that he didn't make as much as people were anticipating. And again, I didn't want Riley Smith at all. He had potential. I thought there was a chance he could make 150K. My cats, man. But I just wanted another backup hooker. He rotated really well with Aaron Clark for the bye rounds. I think Riley Smith played 12, maybe Clark either played 15 or 18. I can't remember. But they rotated well. I thought I'd take a flyer on Riley Smith just in case, because I knew Mamazelis would have to trade out after his buys as well. No, he played 15 and 18. Can't remember. He was never a long-term hold, so I wanted another backup hooker. And yeah, he made over 200K with an average of 50. So super lucky there. There were quite a few on him in the end, but he wasn't as highly owned as he probably should have been given his output. He just ended up making like 50-plus tackles every game. I think he was averaging 35 at the time, but it was pretty clear he was going to average more than that. So lucky with that one, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it was the right process or not, but that was a super lucky round for me. Round 10, so 3 trades here. That was my first week. I made 3 trades. I think from round 7 or 8, we ended up getting 3, but I didn't need to use them. And straight after this, Mamazelis got injured. So I think he got injured in round 9 after I bought in 2 hookers. So perfect timing for me. Super lucky that I bought in those other 2 guys. And yeah, maybe I would have bought in Aaron Clark after this, if not, but who knows. Did jump on Dylan Lucas far, far too late. Well, maybe not too far, maybe like 2 to 3 weeks late, but he was pumping out scores on the edge. Was the number 1 center at the time, maybe behind Herbie. Would have been close. He averaged 56 and then he got injured, so nothing you can do. He's one of the best center options. I don't think he'll be dual next year, unfortunately, but we'll have Tallis Duncan there anyway. Preston for Drinky. Yeah, Preston had a 4-week suspension, which is always a risk with him. He has such a big rap sheet, I guess. I did take a flyer on Drinkwater here. Didn't really want him in. No, I did. No, that's a lie. I did want him. He looked awesome the week before. Was in everything for the Cowboys attack, which he usually is. But he was still goal kicking at the time. He averaged 49 last season without goal kicking and with not much in-play kicking. And he kicked for like 250 metres the week before, which looks sustainable. He was doing all the kicking from in their half. So really thought he could average 60 from there on out. It didn't work out. He averaged 48.1. It was either him or Herbie Farnworth. Herbie played round 12 and 15. Drinky played 15 and 18, I think. And knowing that we did so much preparation for round 12, I wanted someone who was towards the back end of the buys that could help me out, that maybe people weren't planning for that early. Yeah, that was the first round I did consider bringing in Herbie, and it was like a 50-50 call for me. Herbie ended up averaging 68.1 for the rest of the season and was only 40k more expensive. So, yeah, rough one there. Averaged 20 points more, and I might not have ended up with Drinkwater at all. So Drinky lost me so much money as well. I paid about 700k for him, I think. So terrible result there, but it was probably like 70% Drinky, 30% Herbie. So I can't be too mad about it. But yeah, it would have been very nice to pick up Herbie then. Last one was Walsh for Duncan. So what's that? I had Walsh for like 3 weeks in the end. Yeah, traded him in round 7, traded him out in round 10 despite him getting injured straight away. He was just a looper for me for the last couple of weeks. So if I didn't need him to loop, I would have traded him earlier, but he actually provided a little bit of value for me in terms of that, which is not why you bring in Walsh, but it did work out okay in that regard. And then, yeah, like I mentioned, I'm not going to talk about Tallis Duncan too much, but he was really high on my radar. He'd just moved to the second row, playing 80 minutes. His data was like 55 in 7 or 8 games the year before with only 1 try. So, yeah, was really high on him. Started very slowly, but yeah, we know how that turned out. Made 271k for me before I reluctantly traded him out. That was the round I really wanted Jazz Tavanga. So I talked about him on the channel coming into his bye. I think round 8 he pumped out a decent score, like a massive score, playing a lot of minutes in Jakey Turbo's injury or concussion, whatever it was. But unfortunately they had a bye in round 9 and I had other fires that I wanted to put out and pick up, I guess, in Duncan, Drinky and Lucas. So I couldn't pick him up this round, but I was very high on him, as you would know if you saw my YouTube videos back then. Couldn't find a way to get him in, and then he just made too much money at that point, so I didn't really want to justify it. I already had a few hookers as well. He went on to make like 200k plus, so that was annoying considering I was like one of the first that was high on him, like a week or two before everyone else, and just turned into what he did, and he was super annoying to watch over the bye period because he was doing so well. Round 11, another 3 trades here. So, yeah, I used a lot of trades in terms of buy planning because you just have to at that stage, I guess. So traded out Yo for Sharp. Finally bought in Sharp. This one was way too late. I just didn't trust any of his data early in the season. It's very rare that a 5'8" who does 0 in-play kicking, like he averaged 30 meters or something, is going to average 50 plus and even 55 plus or whatever it was. Did not trust it at all, but he had good buys, like really good buys, I think round 12 and 18. Just wanted to bring him in. I think we all needed a fullback, winger fullback this round as well, off the top of my head, because he was very popular as well in this round. He was okay. Averaged 55 for me. Yo, we got the news that they were resting against New Zealand in New Zealand for round 16. So he was missing 4 out of 8 games or something like that, 3 out of 7 maybe. So yeah, Yo clearly had to go. Pretty much everyone traded him out. Cleary on the same breath, not many people traded out. I think he was still 50, 60% owned after this. But I thought it was a pretty clear trade out. There was always a risk that he was going to score well, but he ended up missing 4 out of the next 8 games, including 1 off the bench, but he still averaged 70 in those games, which is super frustrating considering he averaged 49 as my captain. But yeah, I think it was the right process, absolutely. I'm surprised more people didn't trade him out. Just didn't work out too well. And honestly, a 70 average, only playing 4 out of 8 games, it's probably still not worth it, but I could have traded Haas or someone, I can't remember what it was, but didn't work out as well as it could have or should have. Brought in Tarpanay this week. Good buys again. Pretty much that's the theme of these couple of rounds. He was okay. Like I lost 103k on him, but it doesn't really matter towards the end of the season, and averaged 54, so a little bit lower than we probably would have hoped. He was averaging 60 at this point, but yeah, nothing I can complain about if someone you bring in averages 54 for 15 rounds. And then the third one was Marzu for Hosking. So this is a bit annoying. Greg Marzu got injured in like the last 5 minutes the game before, and he had really good buys and not too high owned either. But so he got injured like the week before we actually wanted him, but I started with him, and it looked like he got dropped the week before as well. We didn't really know it was an injury until a bit later because he made like 5 errors that game or something. So there was a chance he didn't end up playing the next week anyway, which would have been even more annoying. So at least he was injured for the long term so we could make a trade. He made 140k off me anyways, from him, so that was good. Hosking had incredible historical data and was moving into the second row full term with Matty Nicholson getting injured. Pretty much everyone picked him up. He averaged like 57 or something in his historical data, playing like 70 minutes in the second row. He was terrible when we all picked him up. Averaged 43.8. I did keep him for like a week or two more than everyone else, or more than most other people, because I knew what he could do. But it just got to a stage where I had to trade him out. It was like I had no one else to trade out that round, and I wanted other people, which we'll get into. But yeah, he ended up scoring a 71 that round and averaged 57.5 for the rest of the season. So that was annoying. He did rest in round 27. So, I mean, that's a bit of yay, but the rest of it was terrible. Round 12, no trades. Definitely wanted to trade. I was considering using all 4 trades this round. I was really targeting round 12 in terms of my buy planning, because I would have had like 11 or 12 keepers and not everyone had a massively strong team, but all 4 of my loop options scored 53 plus. So there was like 1 or 2 safety loops, and then I think Cartonga, Riley Smith and stuff like that, they all absolutely crushed it. The Eels had the first game and they all scored really well. So I was actually a little bit disappointed at the time because most of them were quite heavily owned, the guys I was looping. So if they scored badly, people would have had to take their scores, whereas I didn't. But I mean, absolutely no complaints if they're all scoring 50 plus. Round 13, back to 2 trades. So Horsburgh for Kaloa Matangi. Horsburgh was fine. He wasn't injured or anything like that. We thought he'd make Origin and miss round 12, but he ended up playing, which was awesome. But I was always targeting trading him out at this point because he had such a rough buy schedule. Made 120k from my starting team, so he was really good and actually carried that form on. At the time, he wasn't playing 50 plus minutes. He only played 1 out of the last 7 games, but his points per minute was just so good. So I thought he'd drop off a little bit, which he didn't. But Kaloa Matangi was sitting right there. He was such an easy pickup. He had an Origin risk, but that was the only negative towards him. I think he was obviously going to make 100k in the next 2 weeks, something like that, playing 80 in the prop position, and then averaged 61.6 before he got injured. So no-brainer pickup, no complaints about the injury. Everyone had him. It was such an easy trade to make. Dylan Egan tore his ACL, so that was annoying. I really wanted Aitken. I actually preferred Aitken over Kaloa Matangi, I believe, at this stage, just based on Aitken's historical data. He was back to second row after starting the season at centre, and his historical data was pretty similar to Hosking's, maybe even slightly better. It was like 57, 58 maybe. I considered getting him instead of Tallis Duncan earlier in round 10 when I did pick him up, but I just wanted Duncan. I liked his upside. He was 200k cheaper or something like that. Aitken was pretty rubbish. He averaged 48, which actually seems like, when I look back at that, I didn't think it was that high, but yeah, he was okay, I guess. But then moved to centre too much and then ended up being Tallis Duncan at centre. And then he also picked up that short-term injury at training again. So we knew he was out for that round, and there was a chance he was going to miss a couple of weeks when he only missed that week, but yeah, no regrets. He wasn't great afterwards anyway. Round 14, made the 3 trades. So Cartonga out for Couchman, made 263k off Cartonga, which is crazy. Way more than I expected, way more than that trade probably deserved, but he was awesome. Just had terrible buys, missed round 15 and 18. Couchman was on the board. I was very reluctant to pick him up early in the season. Same as Isaiah Katoa, I struggled to believe when there's such a massive jump when their role hasn't really changed. Couchman's had changed, to be fair. He was playing close to 80 in some of the games, or maybe 60-ish in the middle. So his role had changed, but especially Isaiah Katoa, when his role is nearly identical in terms of his kick meters and stuff like that, not goal kicking, it's hard to believe he's 15 points better just based on improvements. So I do struggle with the historical versus current season data, I guess. So I want to be better at that moving forward. Otherwise, I would have picked up Couchman way earlier. I just didn't believe it. At this point, he was returning from injury after missing. He was meant to miss 3 to 4 weeks, came back after 2, and played 80 minutes on the edge in a nothing game. I think they lost by 30 that round, or maybe won by 20 or something like that. And he had great buys. So he ended up being owned by 97% of people. I was probably one of the latest to get on him. And then he got re-injured and averaged just 40 points in my team. But I did miss his 19. when I safety looped him and got out of that with the Eli Katoa trade. So worked out okay for me. Not really great, but everyone had him, so it's fine. Then Robert Toya for Damien Cook. I wanted to keep Toya throughout the bye period before he randomly made Origin in game one. And then I thought Queensland were the underdogs. He's probably the first to go if things don't work out. They had heaps of guys they could have picked up, put in his place. But he was good in game one, so it was pretty obvious he was going to stay in the team and then miss round 15 and 18, and he was going to miss 4 out of 5 games for us. So that did eventuate, so it was fine. That was the right point to get out of him. I know a lot of people traded him a couple of weeks earlier, which I said, do not trade him. And he got a 96 that week, so that was lucky for me in round 9. But not really, it is lucky, but I mean, I was never going to trade him, so who knows. Cook was just there for bye planning, really. He had just played 70 plus minutes, maybe 80 in that lock hooker role with Simpkin. So there was a chance he was going to be a keeper. So I wouldn't necessarily classify him as a mid-range pickup, more an underpriced potential keeper, but the plan was always to trade him after Origin. He averaged 45.8, which is a little bit disappointing, but he did his job for sure, especially with no real options in round 18 at that point. I know Jazz Tavanga ended up playing round 18, I think. And then Blake Brayley, that was the start of his absolutely craziness. He ran for like 100 metres that round. So there were options on the board, but I never wanted Blake Brayley and didn't have the money for Jazz Tavanga at that point. Like, he was way too expensive. Then Iongi for Lawson. It's just getting rid of the Eels players at this point. I can't remember if I traded Iongi late or early. Either way, he was okay. He wasn't awesome. Like, he picked up a lot of good form back at the back end of the season. He's a lot better with Mitch Moses, which we knew, but got in Nathan Lawson here. He was just a cash down, so I had no interest in playing him apart from, in round 15, I was either going to take his score or trade to a centre anyway, so he played in the first game in round 15, so I knew I would know what his score is, so I could easily trade if I needed to. He scored like a 15 or something that round, which was terrible. But then I made a trade, so I didn't take that score anyway. So that's fine. But then I had to sideways trade him 2 weeks later. Well, didn't have to, did. Probably didn't work out too well, but it is what it is. Round 15, made the 2 trades. Cam Munster for Jaden Campbell. So, didn't anticipate keeping Munster for this long. I was going to trade him before Origin in round 11 or 12. That was the plan, but he just kept pumping out 70s. I think Jerome Hughes missed a couple of games in that period. He actually turned out really well. He only averaged like 50 in my team or something like that, but it was fine. Got Jaden Campbell in. He struggled early, lost 150k, got down to 550k or something like that, but was awesome towards the back end of the season. I had him as a 60-plus guy the whole season from the start. That's why I started with him. I think I recommended him at like a 64 average in one of my projection videos later in the season, and he probably outscored that with a few of those scores. So, that was a fine trade. A lot of people picked him up because he played around 18, I think. And then Riley Smith for Tedesco. Smith had done his job for sure. Just didn't play in the bye rounds, and Teddy had really good buys, top 5 winger fullback, and I think I needed a winger fullback as well. So average 53.8, which is about where we expected him to. I think it was either 54 or 55 he was expected to get. Round 16, another 2 trades. So Savelio Tamale for Jerome Hughes. Tamale got injured the week before, but I missed that score of 1 thanks to Tallis Duncan. Made 200k. He was like a sort of risky pickup at 300k at the start of the season, but he led the league in New South Wales Cup in tackle breaks by a fair margin, so that usually translates well. He just didn't get any ball as well. Hughes, I'd been talking about for weeks, as had everyone, and he'd finally scored like a 70 or 80 the week before. He was awesome for me. Averaged 57, made 135k, but also picked up that injury late in the season, which is annoying. Then, this is a stupid trade in hindsight, and at the time it looked stupid as well. Nathan Lawson for Jed Stewart. Super sideways, probably worked as you'd expect. Jed was fine. He actually scored a couple of 30s, 40s, but the only round I needed him for was round 18, and he got his worst score. I think he got like a 20 or something And yeah, I needed to play in that round, so it didn't work out. It was a stupid trade. No idea why I did it, to be honest. I probably needed a number from round 18, but yeah, terrible stuff there. Round 17 is where I used 4 trades, and I needed to take a drink before this because this is a crazy round for me. Definitely the most interesting, probably most pivotal trades of my season as well. I guess when you're using 4, that's always the case, but yeah, these were very volatile ones. So Sharp for Kiraz, pretty standard one. Sharp was injured for the season in a really like dodgy looking, like it looked like a nothing tackle, but then he had like a really bad groin injury. It's like a car crash stuff. So terrible stuff for him. Hopefully he recovers well. But yeah, Kiraz, I didn't want at this point. I wanted him after round 18 because I thought he was a chance over Lomax to make the team. Ended up being 18th man, but I knew since like 50+% of people were going to trade him in that it didn't really matter if he made Origin because he was going to be so highly owned. And I think there was like 80% of people that picked him up that week, maybe even higher. So crazy. Everyone needed a winger fullback, and he was so like clearly the best on the board. Played round 18, so yeah, no dramas with what he did. He was fine. Everyone had him as well. Hosking for Jaden Brayley. So this is another one I sort of hung my hat on with Jaden Brayley, same as Tallis Duncan. There was reports from Barry Tui that he was going to play 80 minutes at hooker from now on, with Crossland moving to lock. Really wanted him in. He had maybe a negative break even or very low, maybe a 2 or something like that. And yeah, if he's playing 80, he averages like 50 plus historically. So didn't want to trade out Hosking, but I had to. Like, he was the only one I could have done it for, really. And yeah, Hosking was awesome after that, averaged 57, but I wanted Jaden Brayley, and it was the only way. Brayley was fine, to be honest. He scored a 70 that round, which was super fun. Made 120K for me. He would have been even better. Like, I think he would have made close to 200K, but I did trade him out in a terrible Lockie Galvin trade later, so missed out on his 70 late in the season. I don't know if that one, like, apart from the Hosking factor, I don't know if the Jaden Brayley pickup was worth it in the end. Yeah, a few of you guys would have followed suit, I think. Yeah, I don't know how it would have worked out, to be honest. It's probably a 50-50 one. I don't know. Like, going back in time, I don't know if I would have picked him up another way if I could have. Nico Hines for Latu Fainu. So, yeah, another one. Trading out Hines, who I viewed as an underpriced keeper that was underperforming, that I didn't want to trade out because I knew what his upside could be. I was never going to make this trade. Latu Fainu was, like, pretty popular at this point. I think he was, like, 50+% picked up that week. But I didn't want him. Like, he was too volatile for me at that price point. Didn't need him for anything, just as a cash cow, and it was a bit late in the season for one. But the day before, Jerome Luai was ruled out for 2 weeks, and I thought that would mean he'd pick up more playmaking duties, more kick meters in game, which didn't end up eventuating at all. Adam Dewey was the one who picked that up. They changed halves like 5 times in that game. It was ridiculous, but Adam Dewey was the one that looked the best. And yeah, he ended up moving to the halves and lock. It was weird. Weird situation, but I ended up getting Dewey the next week, I think. So it worked out very well for me. Just wish I didn't bring in Latu Fainu. And then, yeah, Hines averaged 60.6 the remainder of the season. That's terrible. Hugo Savala for Eli Katoa. So this one I've talked about. It was for Couchman's 19 that I safety looped, and like 90% of people owned him, I think. There were only 2 games left, and the Storm were the only ones I wanted. Eli Katoa brought him in for Savala. You guys know the trade. I'm not going to talk about it too much. Round 18, Aitken for Dewey. So needed a centre this round. I didn't know who I wanted. It was very close. I actually put out a post, I think, an hour before the game saying I was getting Simi Sasangi, which, yeah, I was locked into. He was playing second row for Hudson Young that round, who was out on Origin. And his dad was really good. But I just had a feeling, like, I think it was like 20 minutes before the game, I was looking at Dewey's stats. He averages like 57 in the halves. And I was like, even if it's short term, that's a little bit better than Sasangi. I think he was just like 100K more or something. But I had the money there. I ended up doing it. Worked out incredibly. Made 212K and averaged 55.4, which included his 5 when he got injured at the end of the season. So awesome stuff. Would have been the best trade I made all season. Would have been my MVP, but I took Latu Fainu's 27 over 85 from Dewey in round 19, which is so annoying. I talked about that one before as well. So that made the Latu Fainu trade even worse. So honestly, I would have been top 50 without that Matu Fainu trade, I think, which is crazy to think about. Toby Couchman for Ethan King. So, yeah, Couchman had to go with his injury, but I stupidly brought in Ethan King. It was Ethan King or Tommy Turbo at this point. I just thought I wanted a second cash down. That's when I think I had like 700K in the bank, but I wanted I would have had 900K after this or something like that. So I could have bought in anyone I wanted. Turbo was very low priced and was doing okay, but I just didn't believe he'd make it through the end of the season without an injury. And I think I didn't want to bank on him becoming a keeper. So in my eyes, he wasn't a keeper, but he should have been, he would have been my 18th, 19th man, which now I know is effectively a keeper. So I should have done it. Brought in Ethan King because I knew he'd be a keeper in my team as a cash down. Really bad. He scored a 35, King, which is fine. It was to knock at Jed Stewart's 19. But then Tommy Turbo scored a 64 that week, averaged 50.8, so became a keeper anyway, even if he wasn't my 18th, 19th man. And I would have actually avoided most of Tommy's bad scores as well, because I would have looped him towards the back end of the season. And I really wish I had a high upside guy like that towards the end of the season. So really bad miss there. People told me to bring in Tommy Turbo. I didn't listen. I knew it felt gross to bring in Ethan King. He was a 1 week punt. But then he turned into the 18th man as well. So terrible there. Another one I should have just brought in Tommy Turbo. But yeah, what can you do? And that was the start of where I had so much money in the bank, like 800K, and I just could not use it for the life of me. Round 19, just the one trade, Garrick to Watson. Yeah, Garrick was never a long-term hold. His scores are just below a keeper, but he's such a big HIA risk, and Manly was struggling. So yeah, he was never making my final team. I was pretty adamant about that throughout the season and throughout the bye period when people were picking him up. He got super cheap, I think, after that. He averaged 49.1 for me, but yeah, it was just never going to be a keeper. He averaged 43.3 after that, but lost like 200K or something, so crazy stuff. At the time, Watson looked like the best hooker option. It was him or Grant. He only averaged 41.7 because he just kept playing off the bench late in the season when they didn't need him in the mid anymore. But Grant was the alternative, and he ended up getting suspended for the last 2 weeks. So yeah, either one would have fucked us around anyway, so no stresses there. And that was the round I really contemplated Tarpanay for Herbie. I had like a 15-minute video just on that trade, really. Just couldn't pull the trigger. Tarpanay was on a bye, but yeah, I don't know. I just thought he was so tired at that point and his minutes were so low, and I thought the bye would help him massively and he could average 60 plus outside of that. Herbie was just so expensive for what he is. He was priced where he should be, but there were so many underpriced keepers at that point. But I had 800K there, should have just done it. I had a few more trades than most as well. Didn't pull the trigger. Herbie got an 81 and yeah, then ended up having to bring him in anyway. Round 20, the 3 trades, Cook for Angus Crichton. So, yeah, I was always trading Cook when he wasn't playing 80. Averaged 54.8 towards the back end of the season, but his minutes were so unreliable. He ended up playing close to 80 every game. So it is what it is. It was never a consideration to keep him unless maybe I had low trades. But brought in Angus Crichton, who a lot of people did as well. He was my favourite edge at the time, I think, just based on his historical data. Average 50, a little bit lower. I would have liked him to average 55, but what can you do? These silly cats, man. Dylan Lucas for Humphreys. Hopefully you can hear me. Lucas had the season-ending injury. I thought it was earlier than this. That's crazy that it was that late. So I went a high upside guy in Humphreys after we saw what he could do at the start of the season. Just wanted him as an 18th, 19th man, and he had the most upside. I could have brought in Tommy Turbo, but it was a bit late. I just thought if Humphreys could get 1 or 2 70s when I'm looping him, that's perfect. Terrible. He averaged 37.8 and missed key weeks, which forced other trades like the Galvin trade. So terrible stuff there. Another one, both of those trades were terrible. And then Tallis Duncan for Herbie, another terrible trade. Duncan was playing in the centres. He averaged 45.7 for the rest of the season, so it was a good trade out for him because he was priced at 700K or something ridiculous. But yeah, finally got on Herbie after Latrell was injured because I was going to get Latrell. If Latrell was playing, Herbie would not have made my team, and I would have been not celebrating because it's an injury, but I would have been in a very good spot when Herbie got injured. But what happened? I got in Herbie, got injured 2 weeks later after averaging 51 for me. So terrible stuff. I was avoiding him like the plague. Was pretty adamant I wasn't going to bring him in, and then Latrell got injured. And yeah, then he gets injured. So Herbie was very annoying this season for me, but that's my fault more than anything. Round 21, back to 3 trades. Kalamatangi for Preston. Kalamatangi was just injured. Preston was a no-brainer for me. He had terrible form at this point, but I knew what he could be. That's why I started with him at the start of the season. Average 58.6, so no issues there. Latu Faini for Cleary. Yeah, Latu was not working out. I think he'd moved back to the bench or something. And yeah, Cleary was who I wanted. He was obviously the number one option on the board outside of May and Haas, who I already have. I did want this one the week earlier in round 20. That's what I planned for, having all that money for, but then they got rested out of nowhere. So that was annoying, but yeah, pretty clearly like the best option to trade in that round. And then the third one there, yeah, getting off my cash down, which I thought I needed. Jed Stewart for Isaiah Yeo. Didn't need the cash downs, as we saw, that I've talked about as well. And yeah, Yeo was always who I was planning on bringing in. Again, would have been the week earlier, but he got rested. He averaged 57.5 after that, which is good, but he missed 3 weeks with that injury and then a rest game towards the end of the season. So not great, but the average was good. Round 22, this is the one trade that haunts me the most, I guess. It was just terrible stuff. Jerome Hughes got injured the week earlier, so he was obviously a trade out. Everyone bought an Isaiah Carter for him. This was the week we had our baby, so I wasn't too focused on fantasy, obviously. Hughes played in the first game. I had the Isaiah Carter trade locked in, so I did see it, obviously. Locked it in, but I had 19 players that week, so I was like, I couldn't have played Drinkwater or Humphreys or either of them or something like that that I wanted to play. But like I just thought it was wrong to not play them both. Humphreys, at this point, I didn't know how bad he was. Drinkwater was averaging like 50, so I wanted them as loop options and not just sitting in my non-playing reserve. I reversed that trade. I thought I could use Hughes as a loop option. Didn't work out because straight after that Storm game, who played first, Haas and Humphreys got injured, got ruled out, so it was down to 16 players. So maybe I only had 18 players before that, but it was down to 16. Needed a trade to get to 17 on the park. Jaden Brayley was my only one I could have traded at that point. So traded him to Galvin, who I thought, like Humphreys, was the high upside guy that I'm comfortable looping. He was going to be my 18th, 19th man. He was terrible. Averaged 38.2, scored a 21 that round. Could have got Isaiah Carter was 49, so lost 28 points in that round. And then Brayley averaged 5 more than him as well throughout the season, and I would have avoided his 19 in the last round, a few of his other bad scores. So terrible, about 70, 80 points lost there, and that would have been good enough, like top 120 or something. Plus I would have had another trade. Probably would have got Reece Walsh 2 weeks earlier, or at least a week earlier. Terrible stuff there. What can you do? Round 23, just the 2 trades there. Herbie for Carrigan. So, yeah, Herbie got injured 2 weeks later. Carrigan was a decent differential. I think he had the highest average available at the time. He only averaged 47.2 for me. This is another one where, like I said, just go for the attacking players late in the season. I got stuck picking up all the mids, which in hindsight was a terrible idea. Next season won't be the case. Same for my next trade. Jerome Hughes for Donahue. Donahue had made 50, 55 tackles the last 3 weeks, playing 80 minutes. I think he played one 80-minute game after that. The rest 60, 70, average 46.8, which isn't terrible, but when someone like Reece Walsh, other guys out there, Dylan Edwards, who probably averaged, Dylan Edwards probably averaged 50 plus, Walsh he averaged 90 or something, but what can you do? And then round 26, my last 2 trades of the season. So Adam Dewey for Reece Walsh. Dewey, after that 5, getting injured. Nasty injury again. That was annoying, but got Reece Walsh in, so that's totally fine. He scored 2 90s for me back-to-back after scoring 2 90s back-to-back the weeks before. So, never seen a guy score 4 90 pluses in a row. Don't know if it's happened before, but I got 2 out of the 4 there, so happy there. Great second last trade. Then Ethan King for Mark Nwangami to Wase. So I needed a centre for round 27. I thought Kiraz would be rested, and then he played in the first game in round 26, ended up getting injured, so I knew that I would need one. Could have traded a few guys, but again, I needed a centre, so I could have afforded a few guys for Ethan King. he was one of my only players not playing in round 27, definitely. So, yeah, wanted someone with the highest upside. I wanted Zach Lomax, but I was 1K short. I think he ended up pulling out a 90 in the last round, but maybe like a 40 the week before. So actually that wouldn't have worked out too bad either, but I couldn't afford him. So I was thinking about Roger Tuivasa-Sheck for a little bit there. He had the duel as well, but that didn't really benefit me. He got a 60 and then like a 40, so that was okay. The other guy was Bradman Best, who was terrible, I think. But I ended up on Wangani Tawase, who scored 7 tries in 2 weeks. So got a 79 and 73, so that one was absolutely perfect. And that was my trades, so pretty much done. I just want to go through quickly now. I haven't done it yet, so I'll have to pause this. I want to see how many were successful trades, how many were unsuccessful, because I don't think I'm going to like that data. All right, I've just done the quick calculations. Wasn't too bad. In rounds 1 to 10, 9 successful trades, 5 unsuccessful. So that's a pretty good strike rate early in the season, I guess, like when we don't have as much data. So I'll take that. By rounds 10 successful, 8 unsuccessful isn't the most crash hot, but a lot of the trades that I deemed unsuccessful were those mid-range or like underpriced keepers who were underperforming that turned out to be incredible, like Hosking, Hines, and Damien Cook. So like I didn't really want to trade them, but kind of had to, so it's fine. Like I'm not too mad about that result. To still have more successful than unsuccessful trades, it's fine. Then you can see why I gave myself just a B plus for such a good rank. 4 successful and 8 unsuccessful trades past the bye rounds. So terrible end of season for me in terms of trades. Shows how easily I could have finished top 50 or top 100. Just terrible stuff there. So that's a wrap for this video. If you tuned into all of that, well done to you, because that was a mission just to even record. I can't imagine actually listening to it as a viewer. But yeah, appreciate all the support this year. You guys have been awesome. I'll still have a few more videos coming out over the next couple of weeks, maybe like a 2026, like players to watch, stuff like that. I do want to get out like a proposed rule changes that I have come up with over the last couple of weeks, or just playing fantasy in my time. I think the product could be better, even though it's so awesome already. Yeah, I'll see, like maybe do some season reviews, like for specific teams, but we'll see what's out there. I'll see what I want to come up with. But yeah, that's a wrap on this one. Thank you for tuning in. That's like an hour and a half. That's crazy stuff. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye.